Hey, all right, you guys, I am so excited for today. Today I have Michaela. I have never met her in real life, but hopefully one day it'll happen because I absolutely just love and adore her. And I think she's like one of the most badass women I know. Anyway, we met over social media. She is a wonderful, beautiful foster adoption mama. And oh, I just mad respect. Like these moms, it just gives me chills every time I talk about it because it's just so near and dear to my heart. So I will turn the time over to her. I'll let her introduce herself, kind of go from there, and then we'll just ask her some questions. So go ahead and take the floor.
Hi, my name is Michaela, and I am a mom to 4 little boys, all adopted through foster care. We have 2 sets of sibling groups. So our older 2 are biological half siblings, and our younger 2 are biological full siblings, and all 4 of them are brothers. And yeah, like 2-ish years ago, we became parents, and now we have 4 kids. So it's wild. I work full time, and so does my husband. And we have 2 dogs and 3 hermit crabs and a wild life.
I love it. I love it. So will you just tell me like what got you guys interested in fostering and then it turning into adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I, before we got married, had talked about having sort of a heart for adoption. I know that that's kind of what people generally say, or feeling called to adoption. We started looking into it really early in our marriage, went to an informational group, and our best friends we'd always known that they wanted to foster and adopt. And so I met my husband through my best friend who's married to my husband's best friend, which is really kind of a funny, weird way of us all coming together. And so we started looking into it. We, early in our marriage, had several miscarriages, which kind of sent us further into headed towards adoption, wanting to make that happen. Like with each consecutive loss, we felt a greater pull to have a family. And so we ended up looking into adoption and feeling like foster care was where we wanted to be. We really liked the idea of adopting older kids. We liked the idea of a sibling group, keeping 2 kids together or 3 kids together. We were actually initially interested in 2 or 3. And that's kind of where we just ended up when we started looking into it. So
that's awesome. That's so crazy. So what kind of steps did you guys have to go through? Were there like classes or courses or home studies or anything like that that had to be done before these boys could be in your life?
Yeah, so we started with just like an informational course, and that kind of outlined what we needed to do. We needed to have, I think at the time it was like 20 hours of education courses. We had to have like a 2-day training class, which mostly focused on like FASD and trauma. I always call that like the most brutal part of foster care training, because you go to this 2-day course and you just like need like a 7-day break from like life because it's so intense. And so we had to do both of that. We had to do a ton of paperwork. We basically had to write on like every relationship in our life, like brothers, sisters, grandparents, significant relationships, our own mental health, our own emotional health. We had a family therapist, to kind of clear to make sure we were all good on a marriage front. And then eventually that all culminating in a home study, which meant that our social worker made sure that our house was kid safe and fire safe and all of these extra regulations. It took us in total almost 2 years to get our licensing done, just because we took little breaks here and there where we emotionally needed it, because the stories are really heavy sometimes. And I always say when I go back and we go and do Q&As and stuff for people who are currently doing foster training. And I always say, you're here to be prepared for the worst. You're going to need to call on this information if you end up in this situation. They don't prepare you for the best because you know what to do. You know how to love your kids. You know how to play with your kids. You know how to have fun with your kids. What's going to be hard is the moments that you encounter their trauma or their PTSD. And that's why the training is so hard, because nobody needs to prepare you for the joy. It comes naturally.
That's crazy. That's so crazy. So how long after like the 2 years did you then get both sets of brothers?
So we finalized our home study in I believe it was December of 2017. It was like December 4th. We literally got an email within a few days with our first set of boys, JJ and Wesley, their information. So it basically just had their first initial, so J and W, their ages, and then like basic likes. And so these emails would come all the time, like every day or every couple days, and they would have lists filled with kids who were looking for adoptive homes or seeking placement for foster placements. And they had all sorts of stuff. It would be like sibling group of 3, these are their ages, sibling group of 2, these are their ages, and then kind of ranking their severity of needs. And if it sounded like it was a good fit, you'd say, hey, can we get more information on this group? And then you'd kind of get the information that was a little bit harder to hear. Or you would say, hey, I think we're going to pass on that. That seems like too much for us, or those ages don't really fit with our lifestyle right now. And so we heard about J and W, ages 7 and 4, just a couple of days after our home study finished. So we sent for more information, and we did not hear back until after Christmas that year. So we didn't really think that they had chosen us or, wanted to pursue anything with us. So we, during that time, heard about several other sibling groups. We had a couple other match meetings, ended up not working out for some kids, just not being a good match for us. And during this time, you never, ever meet the kids. The kids never know that anyone is being considered for them. You're just meeting with social workers, talking to social workers, letting social workers read through your home study process. And what stood out to us about JJ and Wesley is that in their little mini bio, it said they want parents who are Vikings fans. They want parents who will play with them outside, and they want a mailbox. And we were like, oh my gosh, that's us. Because those that are involved in our life know that my husband is a diehard Vikings fan. He has a man cave downstairs that's decked out. And I love snail mail. I send so much snail mail, like every day. I walk up to the front desk at work and I'm like, hey, do you mind like throwing all my letters in the mailbox? So we were like, oh my gosh, they're totally our kids. So after we eventually heard back, we were very excited. We ended up having our match meeting with the social workers, and they said that we were one of 3 families being considered for the adoption of JJ and Wesley. We were also in the process of matching with another set of 2 little boys who sounded wonderful and great, but we just didn't feel like they were ours. And so we, during that time, were, having meetings and talks like every other day with these 2 sets of social workers. And when we eventually came in to have the meeting for JJ and Wesley, we had said, we know this is crazy, but like, they're our kids. Like, in case you needed a sign, like, they're ours. We know they're ours. We feel it. Because what was wild about it was that they were 7 and 4, and the other 2 that were being considered for were 2 and 3. And we always thought going into it, you want younger kids, they'll be more attached to you and all these things. And they weren't, the 2 and the 3-year-old weren't ours. JJ and Wesley were ours, and we knew it. And the next day we got the phone call that they had chosen us, which was awesome. That was February 1st of 2018. And we got to meet the boys a couple of weeks later. They moved in by the end of March, and we finalized their adoption that August of 2018.
So is there a time frame, like once they okay an adoption per se? Like, do you have to wait so long, or?
So it kind of depends. And so with our second set of sons, it was a little bit different. So JJ and Wesley had their parental rights terminated. They had been in the system or in and out of the system for about 3.5 years. So their parental rights, their biological parents had either given up their own rights or they had lost their rights over the course of that time. So they were like what are called waiting children. They were just waiting for an adoptive home. And so there's a lot of kids, and the older they get, the longer they sit in the system waiting. Whereas with our younger 2, they were not yet terminated. So they were a legal risk placement. We knew that on some level there was a chance we might not adopt them, but that adoption was where the plan was headed based on the decisions that the parents were making.
Crazy. So not as much I don't even know what you would say, but like parental control of their like biological right, with ones who have like termination completely, where the other younger ones had a little bit more control to say if they could be adopted or not, right?
So the parents don't, the courts make the decisions. The parents
Okay.
really don't have, parents really don't have any say. The biological parents have been given the opportunity to try to parent, and we as foster parents facilitate that and
Okay.
encourage that and do whatever we can to make that happen. But once parental rights have been terminated, none of that is happening anymore. So in some cases, with our older kids, we do have some contact with some bio parents, and then we have no contact with some bio parents just because it's not deemed safe due to the history. So that's a court decision, that's not our decision, and we respect the fact that our children's safety comes above that at this point in time.
Oh, heck yeah, because they're your babies for sure. I totally agree with that. What would you say, like on the, because I mean, there's always the unknown that they, the court can come and like take them before that adoption's finalized. What would you say on like the hardest days of like the best thing to do to like, I don't know, get through it? Because like you said, it's the unknown, and you said to prepare yourself for the worst because it could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have never had like a straight foster placement where we've worked a case plan with parents. We have always had kids who are coming in looking for an adoptive home eventually. And so with our first kids, we never had any sort of like legal risk scares. With Noah and Micah, our younger two, Noah was placed with us knowing that there was still like a court case going on, and we did not know that Micah was going to be entering our care or the system. We were really rooting for birth mom. We really wanted her to parent. When she felt she was unable to parent, we were confronted with the idea of taking Micah, who at the time was 7 weeks when he entered care. He was 3 months when we finally met him because he went to an initial foster placement in their original county. So when we met him, we did not know really what the situation was going to be at that point. We also did not know that the social workers for the county that they are from were going to take Noah from us if we had decided not to take Micah. So that is part of where the legal risk comes in, and also where there is still a fair amount of, I hate to use the word corruption, but that wouldn't have been in Noah's best interest. He had been in several placements already, and to upset what he'd already been told was his forever home, I think would have been really, really awful. And so I think those were our scariest moments with their adoption, was that, oh my gosh, like once our social worker called and told us, hey, this is what the county has in mind, we were instantly like thrown into like sheer terror of like losing our child, because Noah was ours. We'd had him for months and months at that point. We had already signed a petition to adopt. And so I don't even know how to describe it. It's terrifying. I mean, I was like, he felt like ours. He was ours. I mean, it didn't matter at that point that he wasn't legally adopted. So I don't know. Terror is the best word I can come up with to say how it felt for me at those moments of that risk. But I'm a person of faith, and I had faith that it was going to turn out the way that it was supposed to, and I would fight for my kids for their best interests 100% of the time. So
I love that. No, I love that. And I mean, being a fellow mom, yes, my children are all biological, but I'm adopted, but my parents have never made me feel any different that I'm not theirs. And so I can't imagine like being a mom, like, and it doesn't matter, blood, shape, or form, or whatever. They're your kid. They're your freaking kid. Like, and you're going to fight to the death for that baby of yours. So I just think that's amazing. Oh, you're amazing, because it's just craziness. Then let's jump to the happiness aspect with all of your boys.
Yeah.
So go ahead and just, some of the, I don't know, the blessings. I mean, the faith, like you said, you're a woman of faith, just everything that's come with it that you could let people know why foster is just amazing.
Yeah. So for us, we went into adopting or foster care adoption wanting 2, maybe 3 kids. So after we finalized our adoption, we kept our license up to date just to provide respite care, which is just, when I would say a regular foster family needs a break. we are the kind of people then that they would call and say, hey, can you take this respite? It's going to be this age person for this long or whatever it is. We had kids over holidays or weekends. And so that's why we kept our license open. When we got the referral for Noah, it was ironically the social workers of the 2- and 3-year-old little boy from the very beginning. If you remember, JJ and we were being considered for JJ and Wesley, and then this other sibling group of a 2- and 3-year-old little boy. This family did not, those 2 little boys got adopted by a different family, the ones that we didn't feel were ours. But the same social worker said, I remember you guys, did you adopt yet? I have a little boy who I think would be perfect for you. And so I called my husband and I was like, what do you think? And like, we weren't looking to adopt. So that was a really happy surprise. We got a phone call within a few days that he was in an unsafe situation and we needed to pick him up immediately. So we drove 3 hours, picked him up, and he has been ours ever since. So that was a really wild situation and one of the most joyful, unexpected ways to grow our family. And then of course his baby brother joined the system and then we ended up with 4. So it's been wild, but watching all my kids, it's so incredible. They're so good to each other, and they've all been through the same situation or similar situations. The bond that they all have, and the fact that one of my children is biracial and he's not seen as any different than my others. And even though Michael was a baby when we got him, like they all share this bond of foster care, and they'll all share that for the rest of their lives. And I just think that's so special, and it's so fun to watch, and it's so fun to listen to them play house. And they're always foster dads, or they're an adoptive family waiting for their baby. And it's just so precious. And the way that they share about their lives at school. And, I hear stories from their teachers where they say, oh, Noah came to school today and he told us that he's going to be a foster dad when he grows up, and he's gonna take all the babies who don't have any parents, and he doesn't want to get married because he doesn't need a wife. He's just gonna take care of all of the little kids. And it's just so sweet. And when people ask him like, oh, what's special about you? He says, I'm special because I was in foster care and our family was picked to be together, and just sweet things like that. Like those are just like the most joyful moments when you hear other people talk about your kids and how special they feel, because especially as a parent to kids from trauma, you want them to realize how special they are, to not feel like they got the short end of the stick, even though life dealt them a bit of a crappy hand, and their parents a crappy hand. And I love that they see their situation or their circumstances as unique and special, and not necessarily something that held them back in life.
And that's a lot of credit to you too. I hope you know that, you and your husband. No, really though, like you guys just paving the way and being open and honest with them about it. Cause like, I think it's one of the best things you can do. My parents were open and granted, my parents are white, and I am a different color. So like I would have known, but they were always just open and honest with it, and always and I think that's where it starts. Like you guys as parents, just letting them know it's okay and it's amazing and it's wonderful, and it doesn't matter how your family comes to be, it's beautiful. So I love that. Right. And you're so cute. Your boys are so cute. I love watching them on social media. They're so freaking cute.
They are.
Oh, yeah. I love them. Okay, last but not least, what is like advice or tips or anything that you would give to anybody that wants to look into fostering or adoption?
Oh yeah, oh my gosh. I feel like there's so many on a lot of different levels. So I'll start at the beginning. If you feel like you have a heart for foster care or adoption, oh my gosh, pursue it and listen to it. It is such a special calling. And I'm gonna cry just talking about it, because it just is the biggest blessing in my life. And it's been such a blessing to everyone who knows us, our extended family, our friends. They're incredible. And I'd say that's the first thing, like establish your support and your education, and you are set for success. Because if you have that love and you have that, just that heart for it, it's absolutely something you're called to. There are so many needed foster and adoptive parents, and it's heartbreaking to know how many kids are waiting and all they want are loving parents. So that would be the first one. The second one would be, my second word of advice is give yourself the time and space to grieve your kids' traumas and the things that have happened to them, and don't necessarily carry that with you for too long, or don't carry it in such a way that it's so heavy for you. My kids have had some really terrible circumstances that they've had to come through, and it's heartbreaking. And if I sit in it too long, it kills me that those things continue to happen in the world. They do not define my kids. They are things that happen to them, or they've happened in their past, but they're not what they are. My kids aren't foster kids. My kids are just kids. And so that's kind of my other word of advice, is that, carry it for your kids, carry it with your kids, but don't let it be everything about their story. And then, gosh, I had one more that I was going to say. Of course, this is like mom brain, 100%, like totally losing it. Oh my gosh. It was going to be like something after the adoption process. Maybe it'll come back to me.
You're totally good. No, you're good. I totally get it. I'm going to try and think if there's anything else. No, I just think it's amazing, and I have mad respect, and I've never considered foster ever, but like the more I've learned about it, and the more that, like, because I know there was a lot of concern when I did some polls of like people even with the adoption process of like, there's a waiting period of like parents could take the kids back. And I get that, and I get it's scary, but at the same time, I feel like it's kind of the risk before the reward. Even if it doesn't happen, there's a reason that that person came into your life to like give you a blip of something for your life, even if they're not with you forever. So, I mean, it's.
Oh, it came back to me.
Okay, good.
It's exactly what you said. It's the openness thing. That's the best advice I could give anyone. I remember when we started the adoption process, I was so afraid of not being enough for my kids. I was so afraid that because I wasn't their biological mom, or I didn't give birth to them, they would never love me as much. Or if they found out about their biological mom or their biological dad, that they would naturally love them more. And that was such a huge insecurity for me at the beginning. And the more I learned and the more I listened to adoptee voices specifically, and also birth moms, which is a little different in foster care, of course, foster care adoption versus, a birth mom who chooses to place her child. The more I listened to all of the voices of the triad, the more I realized how crucial it was to my children to know that they were loved, that even though their birth parents couldn't be what they wanted to be, and that's the phrasing we use, we say, mama so-and-so couldn't be the mom she wanted to be, but it's not because she didn't love you. She loved you. She loved you so much. She wanted better for you. And while she didn't make an adoption plan, you were able to be adopted. And I think that's just like the biggest thing is, and I recently read something from an adoptee just yesterday that I love this analogy that love is not a pie that everyone gets a piece of. And, I get a piece of it, and my kids' birth parents get a piece of it. And somehow by my kids' birth parents getting a piece of it, I get less. Like, there is enough to go around. My kids can unconditionally love all of us as their parents in each of our respective and necessary roles, the same way that I can love every single one of my kids. And if by some stroke of luck, we had more children adopted through foster care or in any other way added to our life, my love for those new added children wouldn't diminish my love for the children that I have right now. And that's just such a big piece of it, is letting my kids know how loved they are, how cherished they are, how valued they are, that there is so much room for them to be okay with their birth parents and us, and that we can live in this same world together, even if it feels like we conflict.
I absolutely love that you addressed that, because I think that's honestly one of the biggest fears that people have is like, I get it. Like, how can I have love, or how can they have love, for me back when exactly. But, when it comes down to it, and I think that's wonderful that you guys say it the way that it is like at the time, it wasn't right, but she still loves you. And, this is just a bigger love that you're here with us now, because that's how I've always felt too. My parents have always portrayed it that way, is like, your mom loved you, and this is why she did this for you. And that's how I've always looked at it. I mean, I get it. I think it's amazing. So
I think about it as I was gonna say, I think about it as a mom, and I think it's just one of those things that's like, you never want your children to feel like they can't say something or share something with you because they think they're going to hurt your feelings. Like, I'm the mom. I'm big enough to hold this for both of us. Like, you don't have to be afraid of hurting my feelings through any point. And even if you do, I took this on. This was my choice when I became a mother. So yeah, absolutely.
No, I love it. Seriously, thank you so much for taking the time out of your workday to speak to me and share your story, because I love it. I learn more every single time, and it's just going to, teach people more. And my favorite thing is, like, so far, everybody that I've interviewed, they don't have kids of the same skin color, because that's not what makes, you don't have to be the same as same. Love is love. Everybody needs love. Everybody has love to give. And it's like my absolute favorite thing ever. So I really appreciate you for taking the time out. If anybody has any questions, just comment when I post this, and then I can reach out to Michaela too if you have questions for her. And if you have any questions, she's somebody great to follow up with. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your day and doing this with me.
Thank you so much.